It has been a long time since I've got to do one of these. It is a Real Talk Tuesday, travel nurse takeover, no ordinary path. John here, let's dive into it. We are back in Arizona at our own little No Ordinary Path Desert Oasis house. I am so happy to be back into this, but it's been a long drive all the way back from Massachusetts to Arizona. It's been fun, full of adventures, but today I get to do a hospital review. It feels like I've been forever since I've done one of these. I'm gonna be talking about the University of Massachusetts in Worcester. It is the largest health system in the center of Massachusetts. There are other ones throughout the other surrounding towns, but University of Mass has like 4 to 5 main campuses. The Memorial Campus, which is where I worked in Worcester, there's one called Health Alliance Clinton Hospital, which is in Fitchburg. I'm gonna be referring to my notes a little bit here. There is UMass Health, which is in Marlborough, and another one also in Harrington. But the one I'm talking about, the one I had the privilege of working at, is in Worcester, Massachusetts. It's not Worcester, which is what it looks like to everybody west of the Mississippi. It's pronounced Worcester, unless you're from Boston, and then it's Worcester. It is located between Boston and Springfield, so they literally call it the heart of the Commonwealth. So if you Google UMass Hospital, it's going to pull up like 5 different spots all surrounding Worcester. Most of them are surrounding the biotech park area, but a lot of those outliers are doctor's offices. They just are all part of the UMass branch. The main hospitals are these 3. The upper left is the Heyman campus. Can't speak to it. I'm sure I mispronounced it like I do everything in this area. The lower left is the official Memorial campus and is a little bit older. You will visit it if you're onboarding because there are some orientation type stuff that you do there. Just be prepared. Parking in that is kind of a nightmare, at least in my opinion. And then there's University Campus, which is the housing of the health science schools, the medical school, all that stuff. That's the campus that I worked at, and you really couldn't ask for a more beautiful place to work. It is definitely a full-on teaching hospital. A couple of quick facts about it. It's a medical teaching hospital, which means it's a nonprofit. It's the only level 1 trauma center in the entire central Mass area. It is also home to Life Flight, which was New England's very first air ambulance-based flight program, always near and dear to my heart. It is the only level 3 NICU in the entire region as well, and is a major transplant center for all abdominal stuff, liver, kidney, intestines, bone marrow, all those kind of things, major stuff there. There's also a very large pediatric hospital associated with it. You've got the full-on emergency department, PICUs, all that stuff. Officially, it has 691 staffed beds. 417 of those are acute care. They focus specialty on like cancer radiation type stuff, neurotrauma, critical care, and advanced cardiac surgery type stuff. While they're not a cardiac transplant unit, most of that happens in Boston. They still do a lot of other cardiac surgeries and things there. It, like I said, is a very large campus, and like almost every level 1 teaching hospital I've ever been to, they're always building. So there is traffic and all this kind of stuff. Your orientation was a little interesting because it was split between the 2 campuses. So when you have the opportunity to work there, which I hope you do, you need to pay very close attention to your orientation paperwork because it's going to tell you where you need to go at which place. So just pay attention because those 2 are technically the same hospital split between Memorial Campus and what they call University Campus, but everything is labeled the same, so it's a little confusing. Let's talk a little bit about nightmare parking. University Campus has an off-site parking area that you can see. It's way up here to the north of it. All the staff are supposed to park in this parking lot when it's the weekday, and then they bus and shuttle you through to the campus. And then on the weekends, you park in these upper lots here, and it's all paid parking. I'm not a fan of paying to come to work. Now I get that it's owned by the university, and that's why you have to pay for it. And this is a very, very common thing I have learned on the east side of the country. So still, it always rubs me the wrong way when I have to pay to come from work. Nevertheless, I have a couple tips for you. Number 1, if you are paying, be prepared to be wowed by the fact they only accept cash payments. You pay in advance for a single month at a time, and it's around 61 to 62, something like that, dollars for the entire month. My big tip for you is to go ahead and skip all that noise and park at the main visitor parking that is located right across the street from where you'll be working. Initially, they're going to tell you they don't want you parking there, but they don't care if you pay for it. And if you happen to work for a fantastic travel agency that will reimburse you for your parking, it's not an issue. So that's my big tip. Also, if you're like me and you happen to drive a gigantic dually lifted truck, then don't worry about it. It will fit in both parking garages. Can be a little tight if you get there a little on the late side, so get there a little bit early. Otherwise, that's my tip. They really don't mind if you're gonna pay for it. So if you get grief about it, just say, hey, I'm paying for it. And then they leave you alone. Now let's speak to the specific unit that I worked on. I had the advantage of working in the neuro critical care unit. And I know everybody that at least isn't neuro ICU is gonna automatically go, eee, because that's what I did at first too, right? Initially, I was a little concerned about it. Neuro is not my forte, but it was an area that I wanted to work in, to be up in those states, check them off, and go see all the amazing things in and around New England. It definitely had some not so fun parts about it, and it had some really great things about it. So the neuro-intensive care, they actually don't call it that, they call it 2 Lakeside, because that's where it's located. It is on the lakeside, and they have the most beautiful views. Let's start with the stuff that I really didn't like about it, and then we'll finish off with the stuff that I really loved about it. Number one, this is a heavy unit. 16 beds in it. In this hospital, in terms of ICU being a level 1, you can expect, I'll throw this in here real quick, all the different specialty ICUs. There's neuro, there's trauma. Neuro is sort of neurotrauma altogether. There's medical, there's cardiac, there's surgical. So all the ICUs are in here too. I worked in the neuro/neurotrauma. 2 Lakeside. Kind of hard, heavy patients. These are like strokes, these are TBI, traumatic brain injuries, stuff like that can be kind of hard and heavy sometimes. As the travel nurse there was not very much critical care. The travel nurses are kind of limited on who they allow to take what. So you're not going to be getting any of the really, really sick patients. Some assignments, almost all assignments kind of start out that way as the unit kind of learns who you are, your skill set, how you fit in with their culture and that kind of stuff. And then generally by the end of it, at least in my experience, I found that I am right up there taking critical patients. But in this one, that was not the case. It's just a rule across the board that the travelers don't take, really sick, complicated things like Ventrix, complicated, bolts or any of those type of things. Brand new traumatic brain injuries are all going to go to the core staff. Fortunately, this place had enough core staff available that for the most part, they didn't need the travelers for that. I kind of missed taking care of some of the more critical ones because most of the ones as the travel nurse that I'm taking care of are those that are kind of waiting to go to their LTAC. They've been trached, they've been pegged, they've had massive strokes. They're either paralyzed, they're paraplegics or quads. Or there other stuff that's not really neuro that the neuro unit happened to get because that was the only bed available. Some titration of medicines, otherwise not really much on the critical skill set there. It can be kind of a sad unit to work on sometimes too. Gunshot wounds and stuff like that. There's major tragedies, people falling and that kind of stuff, traumatic brain injuries, massive strokes, young as well as old. The patient population would range from, teenage adults all the way up into the late 90s and stuff like that. So you'll get the whole gamut in age range. One of the other things that did surprise me here is that the nursing skill set that they do and allow for their bedside staff is kind of low. They have a lot of mid-level providers, which I'll speak to here in a second, but some things that they do, for example, like putting in an NG, nurses can't do that at the bedside. It has to be done by the PA or the nurse practitioner. Pulling a PICC line has to be done by the advanced practice providers, which I thought was really funny. So, but every culture has, or every unit has their own thing. Kind of have to deal with it. All right, so on to some of the really good stuff. Number one, fantastic staff. Really fun to work with. These guys were just a blast. It was very travel friendly. I would highly recommend it for anybody that's kind of a new traveler going into something. Number one, because sometimes that whole taking not real critical patients can also be a blessing if you're new. But you would love to have a unit that is very travel friendly, and these guys are that.
Okay, so it's my last day here, and this has been a really fun and enjoyable unit to work at. I've got to get a shout out to this gal. God, what's her name?
Kristen.
That's my wife's name, so I better know it, right? Kristen was,
oh my God.
Kristen was the one that oriented me on day 1 here.
Actually, he was teaching me.
No. She showed me the ropes, but this is the most unique experience I have had here. This is called the Gobbler. It's a great name, but it's a Thanksgiving dinner plate and a pizza. It's got stuffing and those, that's cranberry and turkey. The sauce is gravy and cheese. This one is the Big Mac, which tastes exactly like an open-faced Big Mac McDonald's sandwich. It's the craziest stuff. I've enjoyed my time here. Look at this. This is the best break room I think I've ever worked with. Look at that view.
I was super impressed with all of their aides and techs that work there. Everyone was really helpful to come in, you know, turns, you know, cleanups, whatever it was, everybody was right there. You always had help available, which I thought was great because I've worked a lot of units that don't have that. Very little floating. I floated 1 time on this whole assignment. It wasn't bad. Very little COVID. I have 1 COVID patient. They try to keep them out of the neurosurgical areas, which makes sense. Brand new unit. It is super nice. Best views in the hospital I've ever worked at. Everything is brand new, all like nice monitors and everything. They have a portable CT scanner. I've heard of these things. I've never actually seen them in practice. They are reserved for like the sickest patients, so I never got to utilize it because I never had the really sick patients. But it's really kind of neat to be able to see them. Hey, we're just going to bring this giant monstrosity machine into the bed and we're going to do it right there in the room, which is really cool. You don't have to try to wheel everybody down a CAT scan because you do a lot of CAT scans in the neuro unit. Okay, so I said I would talk about the mid-levels. One thing that is nice is that you always have providers available for you. Now, most ICUs, you can quickly get somebody at least on the phone. During the daytime, you always have some level of provider there. This one always had mid-levels, and there's usually more than one. So if you needed something quick, you could do it. You did not order anything. I never placed a single order in this facility. That's another thing that only the mid-levels can do. It's not within nursing scope. So definitely some different stuff. I will say this too though, having not been neuro-y, it's still not my forte, but I did learn some things, which is neat. And I've been doing this for a while, so it's kind of fun. As a medical trauma cardiac ICU nurse, going into a neuro world is a little different. The way that they treat their drugs are different. The way that they titrate is different. Their parameters are different. It's all about the brain. And it's just kind of a new way of learning and looking at things that I found fascinating. Okay, well that pretty much wraps it up, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's really kind of a niche video for those travel nurses that are watching the channel, but I appreciate you guys for being here. If you are interested in travel nursing, feel free to hit me up. I've got connections to a fantastic agency and a great recruiter. But yeah, guys, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Give the video a thumbs up as always, and I'll see you out there.